Yeah. Well, that is exactly what he said. It's a tool. It's just a convenient
No
tool shed.
pun intended.
I keep my spare
Somebody
parts in there. You just never know you're going to lose a tube.
I keep my tool in there.
So he first has them move her into this crazy steampunk George Millay looking aeroplane that he's building, and uses this as some makeshift mad scientist lab. It's all equipped in his mind to kind of start the resurrection process. And he puts her in the cabin of this thing, and that's where she kind of lives in the hospital where he's working. And he describes in the journal having to kind of douse himself constantly because he stinks, because it's disgusting.
Yeah, he used lots and lots of perfume to cover up the stench of decomposition.
I got one thing to say.
Yes.
It's a good thing he lived in Key West, because any other community would not have put up with that nonsense.
No, he would have been gone. It would have been so gone. Again, for anyone that's just tuning into this craziness, we are talking again with Ronnie Thomas, and he is a filmmaker, and he is making a film, of course, about the tale of, Karl Tanzler is what I like to call him, because that was his given name, but Count Karl von Kassel. And that is the tale of where a man lived with a corpse for 7 years. And we are covering that right now. And taking that hard left turn into Albuquerque, the caller mentioned a certain tube. Is that true or is that false?
So we're jumping ahead a bunch, but yeah.
Okay. That's not.
Okay, let's not jump ahead. Okay, let's keep on the circus.
Let's keep it in an orderly progression.
Yeah, we're not too far from the tube, and I'm sure that the tube has come up. It has been.
We're not
used
far
many,
from the tube.
many
I can
times.
smell it.
Oh, God.
All right,
So,
go ahead. Sorry.
in his as the body kind of becomes his possession, he isn't exactly just trying to use her as this sex doll, this kind of toy to be used. And at least in his journal, which I kind of in a Fordian way just accept, okay, he was trying to use what he considered advancements in science matched with mysticism to try and reanimate this corpse. He had this notion that he calls Brahmin wisdom, which again I think links back to theosophy, where he says the cure for any disease, any terminal disease, is to die for 1 year, be buried, and then be dug up and come back to life. That's the cure.
Oh, wow.
It makes absolutely no sense in our materialist world, right? But he claims to have seen this while traveling in India. He'd been, traveling, and he'd been in the bushes, and he kind of witnessed this actually happening. This man had died for a year. They buried him in the ground. They dug him up, and he was like, "Oh man, that was great. Cancer's gone."
Is it possible the man had a twin? Playing a joke.
Or actually, he was like, "Why did you bury me for a year?"
Yeah, what the hell?
Man, that was hard breathing, and I lost a lot of weight.
Yes.
So
yes.
He's not only convinced with that, but he's also convinced that he has the medical knowledge and the technical knowledge to reanimate her corpse. Some of it is by playing music to her. He travels the world with this pipe organ. Now it's not a lute. It's a pipe organ.
Not everybody has a pipe.
Not a lute.
Not everybody has a pipe organ in their back pocket.
It's not a harmonica he can put in his pocket.
He travels the world with a pipe organ.
Well, that's pretty normal. Yeah, okay.
Dr. Fibes.
That he claims to have built from spare scrap metal on an Australian beach in an internment camp. So it's, again, this crazy delusion but he claims he plays for her nightly, not just, I forget exactly how he put it, and I should probably know it, but not just for the fancy of it, but because it stimulates cell growth, It stimulates her rejuvenation process, and claims that he, over the course of 7 years, made very good progress, and that occasionally she'd spit up blood and her veins would start pulsing and she'd sit up in bed. And it's actually very terrifying when you...
Yeah.
God, yes.
Well, I mean, really put yourself in that mind space. And if you're a
That's
sane
crazy.
person, and I also, to alleviate some of the humor, like put yourself in his position and look at it with some empathy and have a bit of sympathy towards someone like this because, right, yes, this did happen a long time ago, but it
Yeah.
happens nowadays. I
Well,
mean, like
sure.
you do have these people who have these grand delusions
It
and they
does.
fall so deep into
No,
them.
it certainly does. That's something that hasn't changed
Well,
over the
mental
years.
illness is not funny. And
No.
clearly he was, as you put it, delusional. If nothing else, he was delusional. And he
Right.
had the ability to convince himself. I think that part is true, sounds to be true as well. He was truly a pathological liar in that he himself was convinced. That's the very definition of a pathological liar.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he did convince himself that this was the truth, this was real. And there's sort of a really bittersweet romance there. And
Well, there
eventually,
is.
yeah, and we could laugh about it, but
Rotten love. Let me tell you. I'll tell you anyway. But we got about 10 minutes left of the show. So I mean, in the interest of time, how does how does everything start to unravel? I mean, we understand that he lived with her. He tried to bring her back to life.
sure.
And how did things start to unravel for him?
I think more interesting than that, because we're short on time, it's not so much how. I think that the sister shows up at his door, knocks on the door, and that's the start of the film. It's where is my sister, really? And he's
Okay.
like,
And so it's
she's like,
unraveling.
just show me where. Well, she says, show me where is my sister? Just show me her in the corpse, and I'll be fine. And he says, you don't have to do that. She's here with me, and she does. She does, and what I love about it is she does what nobody in Hollywood films does. She's like, okay, sounds great. See you later. And runs for the hills and just goes to the police. And she doesn't like, you madman, you crazy. Like,
Yeah.
she's like, oh, sure. Thank you for showing me.
Yeah.
And just leaves. And it becomes a media sensation. But the most bizarre aspect of the story is the favor on his behalf. Everybody comes to his aid. It's just unanimous that this man was just such a romantic hero,
Yeah.
and he's who should be revered. Scientists write in and say this is all too common in science, where you try and admonish those who are trying to make advancements in the field of science, and all he wanted to do was prove that you can bring a human body back to life.
Yeah.
He should not only be absolved from his crimes,
Yeah.
but given the body back.
Did it say sincerely Dr. Frankenstein at the end?
Well, I mean, like he's kind of this real life Dr. Frankenstein. But what of Elena? They take her body and they put her on display. She becomes this kind of oddity, and the funeral home charges $1 per head, and thousands of people come and take pictures with her.
Wow. Yeah, posing with her. Hey.
So two different fates. I mean, he gets this kind of royal, what would you call it? Like this cheer. And
Okay,
she gets put on display.
but
Huzzah!
at least he didn't exploit her like they did. The
Exactly.
public.
Well, and all he wanted was her back. And
Yeah.
and at the end of the trial, when they said, you know what, you're free to go, statute of limitations, and whatever.
Sure. I mean,
So,
I get it because I mean we're all married men. I mean, I
mm,
mean we all love our wives, and my gosh, and the thought of losing someone you deeply, deeply love is just even the thought of it's a painful, painful thing.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so I mean, I do have that in that regard. I do have sympathy for him. Of not being able to let go of his love, not being able to, and really at its heart, it's mental illness, of course, but it's also deep down inside, it's a love story.
Yeah.
That just beyond the grave kind of love story, oddly enough,
Yeah.
beyond her grave anyway.
Ronnie, I do have a very serious question. So,
Sure.
what are you envisioning the tone of the film? What is the overarching tone for you
I,
of the film?
if I could put it in a way that anyone can understand, I want it to feel like a dream. I want it to feel like this kind of languid,
Hmm.
cloudy, weird dream, because I think that's what the story is. Because it isn't, dreams don't necessarily follow any sort of, realistic path. If you took John Waters, David Lynch, and Tim Burton and meshed their films all together, that's what I'd like this to be.
Okay.
Like this kind of transgressive, surrealistic, quirky melodrama.
Sure. Well, how and that's really just that vision you're putting in my head. That would be a very, very interesting film to watch, and I really want to see this thing get made. So everyone, of course,
Me
that
too.
are listening, go to Kickstarter and even if it's $5, donate it, because
Yeah,
it will be definitely worth seeing this thing hit the screen, and it'll be interesting to see your take, especially the puppetry that you're gonna bring to it, because that'll bring kind of an eerie. It actually make it more eerie.
That was one other thing, Ronnie, I wanted to get to is you have a really interesting group of people involved. Why don't you let the listeners know about the people involved with the film?
Oh, sure. Well, that's, Robin, who's doing all the puppets, is an award-winning puppeteer. She did this film called The Pigeoning about a guy who becomes convinced that the pigeons are kind of revolting. And not a film, a play about, a puppet play about films revolting and their conspiracy theories that the pigeons kind of are gonna end the world.
Wow.
And it's always, it's a perfect match for this.
Yeah.
And my close collaborator Shane Morton, who just finished Frankenstein, created Bikers, and he also did Your Pretty Face Is Going to Hell on Adult Swim, and the effects for the very viral Too Many Cooks skit from Adult Swim. And Stephen Coates, who is my composer and I've always been, working with, but mostly the Morbid Anatomy Museum, obviously, in Brooklyn, New York, who I've been doing all my films through for about 7 years, and we've been constant collaborators. And if you are in New York and you're listening, come check us out and buy everything in the store. But we're like a band. We're less like filmmakers and more like
Sure.
a rock group.
And that's nice to hear. I mean, that's just not the stale Hollywood way of doing things.
No, not at all.
You
We don't
know,
have that kind of money.
Yeah, well, and well, before we forget, where do they find the Count dead? I mean, obviously he died. He died in 1952 at age 75.
Sure.
How?
We come
Oh, go ahead, sir.
full circle to your death mask. So he had being separated from the corpse, a bitter man. He dies years later. I think it was 15 years later, next to a recreated corpse. It should be known that his wife was looking after him. His actual wife was looking after him at the time and making sure he was okay. A dedicated German wife. But he dies with her and the death mask that he had once created as the face of the figure next to him.
And his wife was completely okay that he's laying there with a dead girle? Her mask, anyway?
It goes so much further, guys. It's he had 2 kids. One of them was dying and died.
Wow.
He didn't even bother to go, and it's a wacky story. I mean, I touched on a lot of stuff. I didn't even touch on the big explosion because we didn't have time.
Yeah, it's wow. I mean, of course, you could find more about this story on the internet, but I really, really do urge everybody to go to the Kickstart page and watch your short video you have there, because it really explains how you'd be making this film. And everybody donate, like even if it is like $5-10, kick it your way. Let's see this thing hit the screen, because I really think it's going to be a great film. I really, really do. And
Fascinating.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and your other works are equally fascinating. So I know this will be just as fascinating, if not more so.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much, man. This has been a blast.
Oh yeah, I mean, anytime we could talk about necrophiliacs and counts and
Sure.
and Bigfoots all in the same show, I mean, we're in hog heaven with that. But this story though, do you as a filmmaker, and this is in closing, do you ever get squeamish reading this journal? Do you ever go, oh my God, that's disgusting?
No. I'm an empath. I always try and put myself in the author's mindset and in their position. And I just take it for what it's worth. And if you're telling me a story, and you're not skeeved out by it, then I'm not going to be. You know, I think that's an artist's
Sure.
responsibility to